For several centuries, the only explosive known and used by humankind was black powder. It launched cannonballs at enemy fortresses, filled explosive shells, and powered underground mines dug beneath city walls. It was used to shatter rock and reshape landscapes. But black powder was not the only explosive known to science. In 1799, English chemist Edward Charles Howard discovered mercury fulminate. Even earlier, in 1771, another English chemist, Peter Walph, described melanite, also known as picric acid, trinitrophenol, lyddite, and by several other names, and noted its explosive properties. Still, until the early 19th century, black powder met the needs of progress. But science and industry were advancing rapidly, and soon its relatively low power could no longer keep up with the demands of the modern world. Then, in 1846, chemists introduced two revolutionary substances, peroxylin and nitroglycerin. In Turin, Italian chemist Ascanio Sobrero discovered that treating glycerin with nitric acid, a process called nitration, produced a clear, oily liquid, nitroglycerin. And it could be made under surprisingly simple conditions. In fact, producing black powder was more complicated. In terms of explosive force, nitroglycerin was more than 20 times more powerful than black powder. And several times stronger than TNT. In fact, aside from nuclear weapons, humanity has never invented a more powerful explosive than nitroglycerin. But there was a problem. The devil inside nitroglycerin was wild and uncontrollable. Its sensitivity to shock was nearly as high as mercury fulminate. It could explode during production. It could not be shaken, heated, cooled, or exposed to sunlight. It might detonate during storage. And paradoxically, if you simply lit it with a match, it might burn calmly instead of exploding. Yet by the mid-1800s, the need for a powerful explosive was so great that, despite frequent deadly accidents, nitroglycerin began to see widespread use in blasting operations. The man who ultimately tamed nitroglycerin was Alfred Nobel. We know him as a Swedish scientist, engineer, inventor, and entrepreneur. What is far less known is his deep connection to Russia, a connection without which dynamite might never have been invented. Nobel was born in Sweden in 1833. Just 4 years later, his bankrupt father, Emanuel Nobel, left Stockholm for Russia. After successfully selling a naval mine design to the Russian government, he moved his family to St. Petersburg in 1842 and opened a mechanical workshop. Major military contracts soon turned the business into a thriving enterprise. The family's financial success allowed young Alfred to receive an exceptional private education. One of his teachers was the prominent Russian chemist Nikolai Zenin, a member of the Russian Academy of Sciences, who instilled in him a deep love for chemistry. By the age of 16, Alfred was already assisting his father with naval mine designs. Later, he went to Paris to study chemistry under the renowned scientist Théophile Jules Paulus. Meanwhile, Zenin had spent years attempting to tame nitroglycerin. By 1854, he abandoned the effort, but not before passing along critical safety principles to his former student. He had determined the key properties of nitroglycerin and identified the temperature ranges within which it behaved properly. Nobel also collaborated with Russian artillery officer V.F. Petrushevsky and other chemists who were studying the production and behavior of nitroglycerin. Then came disaster. On July 17, 1866, in Peterhof, 20 poods, nearly 800 pounds, of freshly produced nitroglycerin exploded. The blast was catastrophic. Tsar Alexander II immediately banned all work with nitroglycerin in Russia. By then, Petrushevsky had suggested that the explosions were caused by acidic decomposition products, and that mixing nitroglycerin with a substance capable of neutralizing those acids might stabilize it. He did not invent dynamite. But he was only half a step away, and he pointed Nobel in the right direction. Despite the danger, the demand for powerful explosives kept rising. In 1863, Nobel returned to Stockholm and devoted himself entirely to making nitroglycerin safer. He invented an injector system that continuously mixed glycerin with acid during nitration, dramatically reducing production risks. Workers overseeing the process even sat on one-legged stools, to prevent them from falling asleep and losing control of the reaction. But tragedy struck again. On September 3, 1864, the Nobel factory exploded. Alfred's 20-year-old brother Emil was killed. Still, by 1865, new factories were operating in Sweden and Germany. Nobel toured Europe and America, publicly demonstrating the safe handling of nitroglycerin, if proper procedures were followed. He obtained a U.S. patent and founded a company on America's East Coast. Competition was fierce. American powder manufacturer DuPont actively opposed the new product. And then the disasters multiplied: factory explosions in Germany and Sweden, a blast in the United States, ships carrying nitroglycerin disappearing at sea. Across Europe, countries began banning its production. In New York, Nobel was even asked to leave his hotel, and to take all nitroglycerin samples with him. He faced financial ruin. So Nobel returned to an earlier idea, stabilizing nitroglycerin by absorbing it into a porous material. In 1864, he found the solution, diatomaceous earth, also known as kieselguhr. This soft, porous sediment, formed from the fossilized shells of microscopic aquatic organisms, could absorb nitroglycerin into its countless pores, nearly 90% of its volume. The results were remarkable. The mixture was about 25% less powerful than pure nitroglycerin, but vastly safer to handle. It could be cut, shaken, transported in boxes. And Nobel gave it a name derived from the Greek word for power, dynamite. On May 7, 1867, he patented dynamite in England, Sweden, and Germany. The explosive conquered Europe. It blasted tunnels through mountains, including the massive Gotthard Tunnel. It carved foundations for hundreds of bridges. It helped build the Panama Canal. It cleared underwater rocks in New York's East River. It reshaped the Danube. It was used in the oil fields of Baku, where the Nobel brothers became industrial magnates. By 1867, Nobel's factory produced 11 tons of dynamite annually. 7 years later, annual output reached 3,300 tons. Within 7 years, he had built 17 factories worldwide, producing more explosives than all government powder mills combined. His final major invention was ballastite, a smokeless powder developed with his secretary, Swedish chemist Ragnar Sohlman. Alfred Nobel died on December 10, 1896, in San Remo, Italy, at the height of his power. He owned 93 enterprises producing nitric acid, glycerin, fertilizers, alloys, cable, nitrocellulose, detonators, and every type of explosive. Many believe dynamite was his greatest invention. But experts argue that his most revolutionary creation was much smaller, the blasting cap. When black powder was used, ignition was simple: a trail of powder, a flame, and an explosion. Later came safety fuses, including the famous Bickford fuse. But nitroglycerin and similar high explosives refused to detonate from open flame alone. Nobel realized that a small copper tube filled with mercury fulminate could serve as a reliable initiator. Inserted into the explosive charge and connected to a fuse, the flame would ignite the sensitive compound, producing a small explosion powerful enough to detonate the main charge. He developed a full line of 12 detonators. Number 8 became the global standard, and remains so to this day, even as dynamite itself has gradually faded from widespread use. Then came his final act. On November 27, 1895, at the Swedish-Norwegian Club in Paris, Alfred Nobel signed his will. The majority of his fortune, about 31 million Swedish kronor, was to establish annual prizes in physics, chemistry, physiology or medicine, literature, and peace. His words were clear. I, Alfred Bernhard Nobel, after careful reflection, hereby declare this to be my last will and testament concerning the property acquired by me. My executors shall invest my capital in safe securities, forming a fund, the interest of which shall be distributed annually as prizes to those who, during the preceding year, have conferred the greatest benefit to humankind. The interest shall be divided into 5 equal parts, 1 to the person who has made the most important discovery or invention in physics, 1 in chemistry, 1 in physiology or medicine, 1 to the author of the most outstanding literary work reflecting human ideals, and 1 to the person who has done the most to promote fraternity among nations, the abolition of standing armies, and the promotion of peace congresses. It is my express wish that, in awarding these prizes, no consideration shall be given to nationality. The most worthy shall receive the prize, whether Scandinavian or not. And so, from the most dangerous explosive of the 19th century emerged one of the most prestigious honors in human history, the Nobel Prize.